Welcome, people of the world, ye citizens of Earth, planet Earth. This is Quarian Theology, and you're here with your pastor, Pastor Arthur, and today we're going to look at transhumanism and Christian transhumanism, to be specific. And I hope you'll be ready. This is going to be a new section dealing with science plus faith. Thank you guys for joining us again to another podcast. We love talking and sharing and disputing things to do with faith, religion, God, and science, because all of these things are knowledge. All of these things are knowledge. And we do this in a queer way because we are LGBTQ persons, and we are declaring to people that we can have faith, we can also have science together. Hallelujah. So today we want to focus on transhumanism and Christian transhumanism, to be specific. This will also be a special section where we will be dealing with transhumanism on its own. We're going to have a playlist for transhumanism. Reason why we're going to do that is because transhumanism is the biggest thing that has happened in the 21st century in philosophy and religion, because it is a combination of faith and technology and science together. And this has not been happening before. Before the 21st century, there has been wars, very many wars between religion and science. Of course, not all religions are against science. There's a fantastic article from the memoirs of the Ismaili leader. Ismaili is a sect in Islam. And he writes something very profound about science and religion. And he says that unlike the West, the non-Western regions of the world always combined science with religion. They were one and the same, or they were compatible. But what happened in the West was a different thing. The West had the division between religion and science. So there was a war and a clash. So this great man, who was an Aga Khan, he's an Ismaili man, and he was a founder of the Ismaili sect of Islam. Very brilliant man, very quiet but brilliant. Noticed this because he had education from Western civilization, and he also was Eastern because he was a Muslim. And now, when he was studying the whole thing, he noticed that the non-Western religions, they are compatible. Science and religion are compatible. But the Western ones were fighting each other. Science and religion were fighting each other. And so, what happened is he wrote and penned out the importance for science and religion to join themselves together. And when he did this, he decided to pen it out. And I think I'm going to read a bit of his letter right now. And that is the just give me a bit as I get the letter. Okay, right now we'll try and get the letter later on the program, but what is to be understood is that science and faith can come together. Religion and faith can come together. Spirituality and faith can come together. And so, let me get it. I really want to get it so that we can read a bit of what he was saying. So science and faith can work together, and people need to understand that. Of course, he gave examples of Africa. In Africa, the rainmaker was the spiritual person in the society, and the herbalists, the people who used to make medicine, were also spiritual people. But if you brought that system to the Western side of life, they would say, no, this guy is practicing black magic, he's practicing witchcraft, and so we do not have time to focus on such a person. But in Africa, there was no time for that. There was no attacking people. It was part of life that the scientist was the priest. So the priest was the scientist. And come to think of it, in the Western society, when Christianity went there, they also had the combination of the priest and the scientist. This was seen in the monastery system that was set up by the Roman Catholic Church. Now, the Roman Catholic Church had only one mistake, and the mistake was when the people told them, people like Galileo told them that that science, he mentioned about the rotation, the solar system, and the view of the church, who were the scientists at that time, the Catholic Church, who were the scientists at that time, it was that the earth was flat. And they were standing by the Bible, or claimed to stand by the Bible, that said this. But Galileo said, no, the earth is not flat. In fact, it rotates around the sun. And for that, he was killed. He was executed. And we are very grateful that the Roman Catholic Church has apologized for doing that to Galileo. They have apologized, and they've said they made a big mistake. But that was what was happening in the West that time. The secular scientists were not welcomed to the sanctums of religion, because religion feared, especially Western Christianity feared, that science may release secrets, may reveal secrets that will contradict what is already written in their scriptures, and that way it will collapse their religion they had already built. Because remember, the Christian religion was when it started out, it was a weak religion. It was not a strong religion, simply because they didn't have power. Rome, the time the Christianity began, the Roman Empire was polytheistic and anti-Christian. It was not Christian. So if you remember the first stories of the first 100 years of Christianity and about 200 years, they went through persecution because they were a new sect that was growing, and it spread, and different Roman emperors fought it. So some Roman emperors fought the Christian sect, and it took Constantine to institute it as a state religion. Why? Because it grew and grew and grew. Secondly, it was a new thing, and everybody likes new things, or many people like new things. So they picked up Christianity, and when Constantine also had a vision, and what you call a hallucination or a vision, he said, we are going to make Christianity the state religion. And when he did that, the poor Christians who had nothing, who used to meet in the tombs, now started meeting in the palaces. and they were given state offices. Within a short time, people who were suffering were now glorified, and they built cathedrals, and they started now organizing themselves. That is when the Bible was born. The Bible was born after Constantine intervened and said, you need to institute order in your system. Otherwise, without Constantine, we would have no Bible today. Remember, this is the Western Bible we're talking about. We're not talking about the Ethiopian Bible that was already set up and already decided which books they wanted to have. And then we, of course, now when they sat down to make the Bible, that's when the church started dividing. The Eastern Church now wanted its own Bible. They didn't agree with the Western Church, and so divisions came. And the Ethiopian Church, which we can call the Southern Church, also departed ways with the Western and the Eastern people, and they went their ways, and that's how Christianity broke up into pieces. But what I'm trying to show you is how powerful Christianity was that time, and when it did so, when Western Christianity was established and the Roman Catholic Church was born, they became powerful, and they became the monopoly of science and religion. So they did what happened in the Eastern world and in Africa, whereby the people who have science are the religious people, are the spiritual people. But guess what? The mistake that happened was they were people who were becoming secular, or not necessarily secular. They were just learned without the church sanctums. And these are people like Galileo and Leonardo da Vinci and very many greats. And so what they did, they rose up and challenged the views, the scientific views of the church, because the church scientific views were based on the Bible. If it's not in the Bible, it's not science. That's how they stood. And that's wrong. It's not supposed to be like that. Reason being, the Bible is a book of time. It's a historical book. It was written in different epochs. Over 4,000 years ago, the Bible is a book of 4,000 years ago of history. 4,000 years of history is written in the Bible. 4,000 years. And you want to say that's one book? You must be kidding yourself. It can't be one book. It is a book of books that cover 4,000 years of history. And whenever you read the Bible, you're doing time traveling. So anyway, we were supposed to go into transhumanism. I was just trying to show you how transhumanism has now become a big thing. It is because when the Western Christianity departed ways from science, secular science, the secularists in the Western world now took science head on, and science was revolutionized. Science became westernized. Science that came from Egypt and Greece was thoroughly westernized, and physics and all of these disciplines were created, all because of what happened in the West. Because now the Western scientists left the church, and they only focused on science. They only concentrated on science, and they left the church to concentrate on Bible. So what happened is there is a bifurcated system in the West whereby the religious do not see eye to eye with the scientists. But now in the 21st century, something has happened, and this has been brought about by transhumanism, whereby you have Christian scientists who are combining their faith with science. And this is the new movement of the transhumanists. And so I want to read the Ismaili, first His Highness Shah Aga Khan III, and what he said about religion and science being one. And he says this, this is what he says: the origins of man's religious aspirations are to be found in what we nowadays call science. Those who have studied mythology and primitive psychology know that the magic in various forms started various trains of thought in primitive man by what he achieved, what he seemed to be rational accounts of the natural phenomena around him. And he goes on to say, thus at the same time, man's experiences in the realm of sensation and his striving to explain and coordinate those experiences in terms of his mind led to the birth of both science and religion. Beautiful thing. I'm going to read this article on its own, and we'll put it in God is Still Speaking, because this is a word from God, and we're going to do it separately, but this is what I want us to focus on. The two remained linked throughout prehistoric and ancient times and in the life of the early empires of which we have knowledge. It was difficult to separate what I may call proto-religion from proto-science. They made their journey like two streams, sometimes mingling, sometimes separating, but running side by side. So he's trying to show you that it's not necessarily that religion became science or science became religion, but they were compatible and they were always cooperating with each other, which is not what happened in the Western world, but is now happening in the Western world through transhumanism that people are trying to understand. So we'll do that reading on later on. Let's now focus on transhumanism. And what is transhumanism? Well, we can go to the world's best encyclopedia, Wikipedia. God bless their souls. They are so great because they help us to understand these things. So we want to go through it, just one paragraph, because I already know it. It's just that I want us to get a good definition for you to understand. Transhumanism is defined as an international intellectual movement that aims to transform the human condition by developing and making available sophisticated technologies to greatly enhance human intellect and physiology. So it is an intellectual movement. Now, what is an intellectual movement? I believe that religion is an intellectual movement. I believe that science is an intellectual movement, because an intellectual is a person who engages in critical thinking, research, and reflection about society and proposes solutions for its normative problems. So this is an intellectual. The prophets of old in the Bible were intellectuals. They wrote, they reflected on what was happening in their society, and they thought, and they did their research, and they said, they gave their views. Some of them gave views that they were not happy as how the poor people were being treated in Israel. And others were not happy with what was happening to the widows and the fatherless. And others were not happy when the temple was not being taken care of. All of these people were intellectuals in their own right. And it's just that they were not as scientific. They had basic science. And sometimes the problems in complicated science that exist today, like sexual science, existed those days. But because they were so basic in their scientific knowledge, they couldn't understand these things. There was no microscope. There was no telescope. They were even vague. Can you imagine? Look at the Egyptian kingdom or Babylon. They were advanced in mathematics and science without the tools we have today. So that tells you a lot. That they were people of, if they had what we have today, my God, they would be so far away. Anyway, let's go on. That is the transhumanism. We've defined it. It's an intellectual movement, and its goal is to transform human condition by developing and making available sophisticated technologies to enhance human intellect and physiology. So you see bionics, whereby you can have an arm, your arm is cut off, it can be replaced. This has happened, it can be replaced. And with stem cell science, guess what? Bald-headed people can grow hair again. So all of this is happening thanks to science. Now, let us go to the Christian transhumanism. The Christian transhumanists, we want to study what they believe, because to some extent, I call myself also a transhumanist. Mostly, I don't call myself necessarily a Christian transhumanist, though I can call myself that, but I call myself a transhumanist with a Christian, with a house of Christian transhumanism. I've become what you call polytheistic and pantheistic, but in the Christian mold. You know, you can be a Christian polytheist, whereby yes, you are based on Christianity, but you accept all other religions, you understand them and you interact with them. I could say that's who I am right now. And in that Christian polytheism, or that Christian pantheism, I accept the notions of Christian transhumanism. When I was doing the research, Christian transhumanism is coming up more fast than Islamic transhumanism, but there's a catch. As I told you, this is Western Christianity that is realizing the need to employ technology and science together. Now, the other religions like Africa and the religions in Africa and in the Eastern world, they combined religion and science, but they didn't necessarily have combined technology. Technology is a very Western creation. Of course, it's not that the Easterners never used to have technology. They did. You can remember the Hadouf in Egypt when they used to do irrigation. And you know, gunpowder came from China. So they had technology, but not as sophisticated as what we get from the West. Most of the sophisticated Western technology is from the West. So you sometimes have to give credit where it's due. So what has happened is the religion that is close to this technology is now beginning to friend it rather than fight it. And so you have now Christian transhumanism. So we're going to conclude. You can visit their website on christiantranshumanism.org, and we'll finish with reading their statement of faith. The Christian Transhumanist Affirmation. As members of the Christian Transhumanist Association, number 1, we believe that God's mission involves the transformation and renewal of creation, including humanity, and that we are called by Christ to participate in that mission, working against illness, hunger, oppression, injustice, and death. Number 2, we seek growth and progress along every dimension of our humanity: spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, and at all levels: individual, community, society, world. Number 3, we recognize science and technology as tangible expressions of our God-given impulse to explore and discover, and as a natural outgrowth of being created in the image of God. And number 4, we are guided by Jesus' greatest commands to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Number 5, we believe that the intentional use of technology coupled with following Christ will empower us to become more human across the scope of what it means to be the creatures in the image of God. In this way, we are Christian transhumanists. So as I've told you, I also have a Christian transhumanist in me, because I believe this. I affirm, I also stand by this. So if you stand by this, then you are a Christian transhumanist. And secondly, as I've said, you can be a polytheist or a pantheist. A pantheist meaning, rather, pantheist is much better than polytheist. You can have a bit of other faiths with you. But I stand with these guys. These guys are doing a good job. And you can join and listen, because technology is doing wonders in the world. Right now, I assure you, by 2030, there will be great technological advancements because of the rate at which man is studying the world and the cosmos. It's unbelievable. This is the best time to write a Bible, when we have discovered everything. This is the time to write a new book. Actually, these days, when I read books, I look at the time when they were written. I'm more into futuristic books right now. I'm into prophetic books. You know, futuristic just means you're prophetic. You're forward thinking. You are progressive thinking. And it's no longer the ancient futurism. You know, the ancient futurism is we're waiting for Messiah to come. But Messiah has taken too much time to come. So what are you going to do? Are you going to sit down and not make your world a better place? No, you're going to make the world a better place. And as you wait for Messiah. And that's, I think these guys are also a millennial. You know, a millennial means when you are a millennial, you don't really wait for a Messiah to come. But you can wait for Messiah to come and you still work and you still do things. So I'm waiting to hear the eschatological view. But guess what? You know, every sect has divisions. And as this church grows, I know there will be divisions. People will split and they will create their Pentecostal transhumanists. And then somebody will say, no, I want to be a Baptist transhumanist because we want to baptize. So they've got to be prepared. Every sect has its ups and downs for growth. So today we were focusing on Christian transhumanists.